Hey everyone, welcome back to RJK English. Today we're talking about communication. Communication. What is communication versus conversation? Conversation is what you see here with these arrows. It's talking back and forth. Just talking back and forth, right? Hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing fine. Did you see the ball game? Yeah, I saw the ball game this weekend. It was good. That's a conversation. Communication is really understanding what the other person is trying to say to you. And for them to know that you know what they're saying. So this is different from conversation. And this is very important in our relationships, whether at work or at home. And a lot of this comes down to interpretation. Everybody has their own past experience. Everybody has their own particular knowledge. And everybody has their own assumption about what we're talking about and the relevance and the context of what we're talking about. So you might be talking to your boss about your stress at work. And he might take it too seriously. Like, oh, are you going to quit? And you're like, no, I'm just talking about the stress I'm having at work. I need to just talk about it. At some point he might stop you and say, now, I think you're saying that you're having problems with this person and that maybe we need to deal with it. And at that point, you might have to talk back and forth. This is communication. You're really getting to what is the person trying to say. That's why I put these circles here. Because as you're talking, this is your thinking. You think you know what you're communicating to the other person. This is what they think they're hearing. This is what they think they're saying, and this is what you think you're hearing from them. It might not be exactly correct. Have you ever tried to talk to someone and at the end of it, you realize they had no idea what you were talking about, right? They had no idea. Yeah, that's because you weren't really communicating. You were trying to help them understand something and they weren't getting it. They didn't really get it. And that might be because of a lack of knowledge. It might be because they're in a hurry. It might be because they're thinking in their own head about something else and they're not really concentrating. But let's step back for a second and talk about how you can answer questions from someone, okay? And it has to do with this. So someone asks you, I was talking to my student from China about this just a moment ago. What was it like, what was your schooling like when you were growing up? This was a question on a lesson that we were working on. What is your schooling like as you were growing up? Now the person says, oh, I went to a public school and then I went to a private school. The private school was hard, but I liked it and it helped me to get into a good college. Okay, you have communicated that you went to a public school and you went to a private school and that you got into a good college, right? The problem is you're talking about China and the listener is from the US. So this person's from China, that's you, and I'm from the US. What could be the problem with me interpreting that short sentence you said? You went to a public school and then a private school, you went into a good university. The problem is I don't know anything about the Chinese schooling system, right? So as you're talking to me, you have to think about my experience, knowledge. You want to make sure that I have relevant information and that it's in context. Okay, so what could you maybe think about in your own head? How is my experience in the Chinese system different from other people's experience in the Chinese system? Does everyone go to the same school as I do? And what does he know about China? So if I think about this, I think about adding a context. I went to a public school and then a private school in China. Most people in China go to public schools. And everybody in China can take tests in order to get into really good schools. But you also need money if you want to get into a very good private school. So you need good grades and money. And a lot of times in public school, you can't always get that. So if you want to go to a really good college, like an Ivy League college, you need to get into a private high school. That's what I did. I went to a public school. It was a upper level public school. I was in a very good Beijing university, let's say. Beijing school district. And then I was in a private school, which was an international school. I was learning from people from different countries, and it helped me get into a really good college. So now I, as the listener, have more context. I know what your experience of school was like compared to other people in China, so that I can kind of take that and put it into my background of how I experienced school here. Now that leads to more of a conversation. Oh, here in the US, when I was back home in Iowa, which is in the middle of the country, it's very, very rural, we did not think about going to an Ivy League school. We all went to public school. There were maybe a few private schools, but overall we didn't think about going to major schools. But when I moved to the East Coast, people here are sometimes go to very, very good schools, and they do go to Ivy League colleges. So now I understand more of your experience, right? So what did you do? You thought about what I knew already, and you tried to make it relevant to me so that I could understand it. And you contrasted your experience and maybe some other people's experience. And maybe you would have even needed to ask a question at the end. So this is this type of schooling I went through. Is that anything like what you went through? You can ask that question, right? And they'll say, well, in the US, this is how we do it. And then you might ask, do you have major exams that you have to take? The other person might say, no, not really. I mean, we take the SAT before college. Now we're having a real conversation, right? But that's because you thought about my relevant knowledge before as you started talking to me. And if you're going into IELTS, you're going to answer questions in IELTS, it's good to think about this. What does that other person need to know in order to understand my experience? Okay, so I hope this is useful. If you have any questions, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and comment. And you can also go to RJK English and ask questions there, and I will be sure to answer. So, yeah, I hope this is very helpful. All right, see you.